What's up, power players? It's your main man, Chronos, bringing you another adrenaline-fueled episode of What If Deku Had the Gamer Powers? This is part 5, and trust me, it's a game changer. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and let's dive into the chaos together. Before we kick things off, a massive shout out to the power players. You guys are the backbone of this channel. Your support is like a superpower, and I can't thank you enough. Ready for the ride? Let's do this. Chapter 20. Do we have to? I countered after a moment of thought. It isn't like there are any other guilds like this. So we won't need to specify our guild or have a guild battle or anything like that. Are you sure about that? Momo reversed it on me. You did say that there are other people out there with non-quirk powers. Maybe there are other people with the gamer? Or even just people with powers like your guild tab, Ami suggested. Without the interface or other powers of the gamer. / I just think it would be good to have a name for our group. / Cassandra signed out of habit. / in case we need to talk outside of the guild chat. / Besides, it's better to have a cool name, Ochako added. Don't you want to give it a name? Tsu asked, looking at me carefully. It's not that I don't want to. I hedged. It's just every idea I thought of at first was really nerdy. Such as, Mikoto pressed, a hint of light teasing in her voice. Well, I think my best idea was All Might's Army, I answered. Is that a Harry Potter reference? Ami caught it immediately. Mikoto, Cassandra, Ochako, and even All Might looked confused. Only Mom and Momo seemed to get it. So the four of us briefly explained about the study group Hermione formed in the 5th book to counter a deliberately obstructive teacher. It's not bad. Mikoto frowned. We are sort of a study group, and All Might as the mentor fits. But it is a bit geeky, and we aren't exactly rebelling. It is flattering. The symbol of peace agreed. But I am not sure about calling ourselves an army, reference or not. Still, it explains the names of your attacks, Momo said thoughtfully. Is there something wrong with the names of my attacks? I looked at her, and then the others. Ami, Ochako, and Cassandra all shook their heads. Mikoto refused to meet my eyes, and Momo quickly waved her hands. No, nothing, she denied. Just if these are your interests, then that makes sense. I was wondering, why did you change your attack names? All Might prompted. Well, I started using names of American locations, I said, because I'm a big fan of yours, All Might. But I thought I should do something at least a bit more unique. So I started picking fictional locations that I thought fit with each attack. How so? Ami looked interested. Well, my key slice attack didn't have a name, I said, but I thought about cutting things, which led to swords. And Lord of the Rings has a lot of cool and powerful named swords, so I decided my key slice would be Gundor Smash. And then your Asgard Smash is a reference to Mjolnir, Ami mused. And also Thor's Fist, I confirmed. But yes, I thought it fit with bludgeoning power of Ki Blast. And the Hogwarts Smash? Momo asked curiously. How does that fit? That's telekinetic attack, I said. And there are lots of spells in Harry Potter that move things around. And I just like the series. We're a bit off topic, Mom reminded us. Were we going to try to find a name for the guild? What if we just called it the 1A study group? Momo asked. Inko Obasan isn't in class 1A, Tsu pointed out. And technically, All Might isn't either. And what if Izuka ends up inviting someone from outside the class? Ochako suggested innocently. Yeah, Mikoto nodded at Ochako. We might want some guys from the support class to join as crafters. After all, the dungeons would make great labs. Safe, isolated, and now with extra time to work or experiment. Oh, Ochako suddenly exclaimed. How about Izuka's angels? Again, what about Midoriya-san and All Might? Mikoto interjected. We could just be Bosleys, he proclaimed with a broad smile. Mom chuckled. The rest of us just looked at him blankly. He and Mom briefly explained the American series about a team of female secret agents, sponsored by a reclusive millionaire and supported by a person called Bosley. Wow, I didn't know that, Ochako said. I guess that means I made a reference like Izuku. What were you thinking? Momo asked. That we were a bunch of cute girls around Izuku, and that Miss Inko and All Might were like our guardian's angels. Yeah, no. The electrokinetic quickly shot her down. Meta, Ami whispered. What was that, Mizuno-san? Mom asked. Meta, she repeated. I was thinking, even though Izuku doesn't have quirk, he is still a metahuman like the rest of us. But more than that, this power. We can see our character sheets and discuss our abilities in real, numeric terms. It is like we are metagamers in our own lives. So maybe the guild name could be something with meta in it. Not bad, Mikoto nodded. Meta guild? Ochako pondered out loud. Meta league? Meta squad? Knights, Cassandra suggested silently. We all looked at her inquisitively. There was a sports team in my... Well, not my hometown, since we never stayed anywhere for too long. But a town we spend the most time in, and came back to twice. They were called the Knights, and I liked watching them play, and admired them for their charity work. Meta Knights? Momo said the English phrase. That makes it a game reference. I told them sheepishly, scratching the back of my head. But I do like it. Maybe change it up, like Knights of the Meta instead. I like it, Ochako agreed. Not too bad. Mikoto seemed less sure. It is ultimately your call, young Midoriya, All Might told me. What if we make it Japanese? Mom offered. Meta no Kishiden. Meta no Kishiden, I repeated, testing the sound of it, the sense of it. I feel that is better, Momo said. Yeah, that's good too, Ochako nodded. I am fine with it, Cassandra said, practicing signing it in both ASL and JSL. I also agree, Ami said. But to that point, can't you change it later, Izuku? I can't, I answered. But it costs 1,000,000 yen the first time, and doubles every additional time. Even with the dungeons, that seems like a waste of money. That said, I do like the name. Though I am thinking of still writing it in katakana. They all assented, so I entered that name. We are now. We split up and returned home not long after that. Though All Might had left us with a warning that he and Mom would need to be in my party when we had any written exams. Not that he didn't trust us, but just to be fair to the other students. The next morning, Tsu met me on the way out. 1 block up, we ran into Cassandra. Not literally. Then at the next intersection, were Ami and Ochako. Then Kyoka, Ashido-san, and Kirishima-san. Momo and Mikoto joined us, along with Kendo-san and Subiraba-san. Others drifted in, until most of Class 1A and about half of 1B were walking together. It almost brought a tear to my eye. I had gotten so used to being alone, I had never walked to school with friends before. Sure, not everyone was there for me. But none of them were shunning me, mocking or pitying me. That introspection was suddenly cut off when we rounded the corner and saw the gates of UA. There was a crowd outside. And not just any crowd. Some of them I recognized. All but a few had either microphones or cameras. Real, expensive video cameras in most cases. They noticed us and charged. Is it true that All Might is teaching here? What is it like having the symbol of peace as a teacher? How does All Might take his coffee? That last one almost got some of my classmates. Even I almost fell for it, but the chill of Gamer's mind stopped me. We would learn in our second year about that press tactic. The reporter would ask a random and seemingly harmless question to get you to open up. And once you started talking, it was harder to stop. Plus, people actually wanted to know stuff like that. Like my hero magazines, and the fact that I knew Endeavor's favorite food was spicy chicken wings, while Hawks loved Wagyu beef and yellowfin tuna sashimi. All right, height. The entire street shook. The paparazzi fell to their knees, as President Mick's shout was focused on them. Well then, a sharply cold voice followed. Principal Niza didn't normally cut an imposing figure. Despite that, more than a few members of the press shivered. I believe we have all discussed the rules at this institution, he reminded them. So unless any of you would like to lose your press access to UA, when the sports festival is less than a month away, I suggest you move aside and let my students enter. Then the two of us can address your questions. He glanced over at us. Please head inside. We hurried inside, and to our classrooms. Okay, sit down. Aizawa-sensei groaned wearily. He was starting a full 10 minutes early, which he almost never did, preferring to nap right up to the moment the bell rang. That alone put most of us on edge. Is this about the mess outside? Modu. Amo-chan asked, as she slid into her chair. What? Eraserhead looked surprised. Then he shook his head. No. All Might was caught leaving the school yesterday. Usually he is more careful, but he heard about a crime, so he ran out. Of course. All Might probably normally came to school in his real form. Had a baseball cap or something to hide his famous hair, and no one would think that slender person was the #1 hero. And some people saw him. Wondered why he was at UA, especially on a Sunday. Spread it on social networks. Someone was actually logical enough to figure it out. All Might and the principal wanted to keep it quiet longer, but that cat's out of the bag. He sighed. Then he glared at us again. No, what I want to talk to you about today is another important milestone, he explained. Normally I would have done this first week, but I was convinced to delay until you were more settled in and familiar with each other. But it's been long enough, so we're going to get this over with. Today, you'll be selecting a class representative. Most of the class started to cheer. Aizawa's expression cut that short. Sensei, how do we choose a representative? Momo asked. The school doesn't specify a method, he said flatly. And I personally don't care. Do whatever you want. Just be done before first period, and don't wake me up. He put in earplugs and zipped himself into his sleeping bag in the corner. We all looked around at each other. Well, we should put it to a vote, Ida-san said firmly, yet trying to keep his voice down. Won't we all just vote for ourselves? Ashido-san pointed out. Not necessarily, Ami said softly. We could simply specify that you cannot vote for yourself, Todoroki-san suggested. There are other ways we could decide, Mikoto pointed out. Like what? Shoji-san asked. A rock-paper-scissors tournament? Sero suggested dubiously. I was thinking something more merit-based, Mikoto smirked. What about arm wrestling? Kirishima suggested. I was thinking more like rankings. She rolled her eyes at him. That led to everyone looking at me or Ami. Well, I said sheepishly, I think voting is best. We live in a democratic country, and everyone deserves a say. But at the same time, I think we should ask first who actually wants to be the class rep. Are you saying you don't want it? Ida-san seemed affronted. Honestly, no, I told him. I mean, I get that it looks great when applying to internships and stuff. And you get to spend time with our senpais and the pro-hero teachers. But it means giving up 1 to 2 hours, 3 to 5 days a week. On top of our normal classes and hero classes. That means less time to study or practice, or less time to hang out with friends. More than a few of my classmates frowned. Besides, I don't think I'm up for it, I said. Mikoto raised an eyebrow at me, and Ami looked uncertain. Okay, I waved my hand. I might be somewhat good at giving advice and coming up with plans in combat. But taking into account the opinions and desires of 19 other people, and representing and negotiating for them? I don't feel like I can do it. That got a lot of thoughtful looks from the others. I almost voted for you anyway, Mikoto said softly, as we sat down for lunch. In the end, only 6 of my classmates chose to put their names on the ballot. Momo, Mikoto, Emo-chan, Ida-san, Kirishima, and Todoroki-san. Ida got 12 of the votes, Momo got 5, Mikoto got 4, Emo-chan got 1, and neither Kirishima nor Todoroki got any. Really? I was surprised. Why? The guy complaining about how much time it would take was the one who has the power to stretch out time. She told me in a pointed whisper. I didn't think of that. I blinked in surprise. She gave me an incredulous look, and Ami and Ochako both stared at me a bit more kindly. I did just get that talent yesterday, I reminded them. And it's not like I've had a chance to try it out. And if I lost my time after school, that would affect everyone else too. What does that mean? Kyoka asked, having joined us just in time for the last sentence. Momo was still getting her food, but the rest of the guild was already sitting down when the long-lobed girl appeared. I am leading a physical and quirk practice group, I told her. In fact, if you have some time today or tomorrow, I wanted to talk to you about if you wanted to join us. We only have a limited space, but I can fit in a few more, and we all agreed it should be you. Sounds interesting. She nodded. Let's. Before she could finish, she was cut off by the blaring of sharp, almost deafening alarms. All around us, everyone began to leap up and charge the cafeteria exit. Our lunch period was composed of the first years, and half of the second years, depending on their electives. We hadn't gone through any emergency drills yet, but I would have thought the second years had. But the real thing was different than a drill, and they panicked too. Kyoka also jumped out of her seat, and then noticed the 7 of us hadn't. She calmed down slightly at our lack of concern. Protocol is to report to our classroom, Ami said, barely heard over the din. Really? Sue tilted her head. It's in the student handbook, Momo confirmed. Let's go. Lead on, Fukukai-cho, Kyoka teased her slightly. Unfortunately, it wasn't that easy, as the hall outside was full with everyone who had fled before us. And the ones who were not as quick trapped us when they ran, too. I maneuvered everyone over to the wall, and set myself up as a barrier between them and the crushing, frightened horde. Especially Ami, who had the lowest HP, and Mikoto, who was likely to taser them if she got jostled too much. Ochako, Cass, I said over guild chat, will you two hit the water fountains? Ami, get ready to cool their heads. Momo, please make a handheld speaker and microphone that Kyoka can hook up to. Tsuyu, could you go onto the wall to make a little more space? They all followed my requests. Then I touched Kyoka's shoulder and began to vibrate it slightly with my power. Kyoka, nod if you can hear and understand me, I sent to her telepathically. Her eyes widened and she nodded. That shaking is me. I am transmitting my voice directly. I mislead her honestly. Bone conduction? Her mental response came back to me, but I pretended not to hear it. I asked Momo to make a mic and speaker that you can hook into. Please pass the mic to Ida-san. Momo passed over the electronics. Kyoka plugged into them, handed the speaker up to Tsuyu, and then passed the microphone to our newly elected leader. He also looked surprised, and I jerked my head up. He then noticed the many balls of water forming over everyone's heads. I counted them down with my fingers. Ami splashed all of our schoolmates in the face. They stopped screaming and shouting as they sputtered instead. Then Ida-san lifted the mic. Everyone settle down, he yelled sternly. We are UA students. Even those of you who do not want to be heroes are here to learn to work with heroes. Which means you must remain calm in an emergency. People will be counting on us, looking to us when things go bad. Many of them looked down, disappointed in themselves. Now we must all return to our classrooms in a calm and orderly fashion, he continued, until we find out the nature of this alarm. It's the press, Sue said, pointing from her higher vantage point. It looks like something happened to the gate, and they all charged in. Now the looks over disappointment turned to flat-out embarrassment. We all lined up and marched back. Nice job, Kaicho. Mikoto slapped Ida-san on the back. Yes, well, I couldn't have done it without your help, he admitted. Still, I wonder how the press got in, Ochako wondered. She kept her cool and her disguise until she rounded the corner. Then she nodded to Jammer, who threw away the very real-looking but very fake video camera. He had done his job well. He had gotten much better control over his quirk since she started working with him 4 months ago. Back then, it had been a full half-mile radius, or nothing. Today, he had just knocked out the front gate cameras, which had both attracted the attention of UA's staff as intended, but also gave Mr. S enough time to destroy the barricade, unrecorded. After that, she had just had to whip the real paparazzi into a frenzy and send them charging in. Mob Psychology 101. She threw her fake press pass in the trash and pulled the brown wig off her red and blue locks. Then she skipped down the street, twirling the hairpiece on one finger. After we returned to 1A, Aizawa-sensei informed us that the press had somehow broken in, and that we were to go straight home after classes. We were to leave instead of clubs or any studying, because they needed to fix the gate and wanted to check the rest of the school, just in case. Mom, I called up Guild Chat. They are asking us to leave right after school, because of the press trying to break in. So you don't have to come here. But I was wondering if it was okay if I invited everyone to come over to our place instead? Plus Kyoka, since I was going to invite her to join the guild. Momo and Ochako both looked at me, and Ami decidedly did not. That's fine, she answered a second later. Of course, all might boom to us silently. I cannot attend, because I will be here. I have our meeting scheduled, Momo said. I would like that, Ami said. Going to a friend's house, Cassandra said wistfully. Okay, Ochako agreed excitedly. Sure, Tsu said simply. Mikoto just gave me a nod. As class ended and everyone began to filter out into the hallway, I signaled Kyoka. The others went on ahead. I gave them the address in chat. And if they had problems, Tsu could lead the way. What's up? She asked. Since we can't meet up here today, I told her, we are going to my home instead. Would you be okay with that? Since I live pretty close. Weevoo? She prompted, teasing but also a bit suspicious. Me, Tsu, Cassandra, Ami, Mikoto, Ochako, and Momo, I explained. And my mom will be there too. Quite the little harem, she smirked. But there was also a flash in her eyes. She suspected something. And no, I stammered. It's not like that. We're just friends and study partners. Or at least mostly, I thought as certain times with Tsu sprang to mind. I'm just messing with you, she said. Sure, study session at your place sounds like a place. Let's go. We left and ran into Sirokuen. Oh hey, he said. I forgot my math book. I tensed. Sirokuen was a nice enough guy. My acceptance video had shown him helping Ida-san and talking to the teachers on my behalf. He had come to the study group meetings twice and got along with everyone. Still, I wasn't ready to trust him with my secret. Beyond that, there were only 2 slots in the guild if Kyoka accepted, and I had a person in mind for one of those. I wanted to keep the final slot open, just in case. Plus, I hadn't asked Mom, or talked to the others. It would only take a few minutes, but I needed to do it first. Kyoka sensed my hesitation and said glibly, We were just talking about how the press got in. I thought they must have bypassed the gates, like with hacking or teleportation. But Izuku was thinking maybe they destroyed them. Huh, he considered that. Maybe we'll be able to tell when we get there. I kept in a sigh of relief. I hadn't thought about that, he said, as we started walking to the entrance. I mean, the school's barricades just look like walls. Izuku, you could probably just jump over them. I could make a taped ladder to climb them. It doesn't seem that hard to break in. The wall is more of a warning, I think, I countered. There are cameras all over the place, and probably other defenses. Really? Who'd want to risk breaking into a place where a couple dozen pro heroes work? Kyoka added. Reporters who would take any risk for a good story? He suggested. We reached the gate and paused to look at the mass of fragmented metal. Then I blinked at something else. Mom? I asked. What are you doing here? Shiro-kun and Kyoka stared at her, like she was more surprising than the ruined gate. And I managed to avoid saying aloud that I had told her about UA calling off after class clubs and meetings. Miss Midnight decided it is time to change her costume again, she told us, and one of the third years isn't satisfied with her costume anymore. I was supposed to go over some designs with them today, but that was cancelled. I told them I would drop off the sketches instead, so they can look at them. If you want to wait a minute, we can go home together? Yes, that sounds good, I told her. Then I realized. Mom, this is Shiro Hanta and Jaira Kyoka, two of my classmates and friends. Guys, this is Midoriya Inko, my mom. You're the one who designed my costume, Kyoka told her. Thanks, it rocks. You are welcome, dear, Mom replied happily. Izuku, I'm just going to run these up. She lifted her folio case. I nodded. That's your mom? Shiro whispered after she was a few meters away. If you hadn't said that, I would have thought she was your sister. Really? I prompted in confusion. Dude, your mom is hot, Kyoka said. Yeah, Shiro agreed. I turned to look at my mom, just before the door closed, and hid her from view. I wasn't in the habit of staring at women. I did look sometimes. I was only human and a teenage boy. But I tried not to objectifying them. Especially my mom. I thought she was pretty, but knew that she was below average height and technically overweight. Except, now that I looked again, she wasn't. A year ago she had been a centimeter or two shorter than me. Since then I had grown a centimeter, and now Mom was taller than I was. She was also skinnier. She wasn't as slender as Kyoka or Ami, nor as voluptuous as Miss Midnight or Momo. But she was fit and still curvy, and I really wanted to slug these two for making me think about this. I never noticed, I said flatly. Sorry, Shiro-kun said. But he was looking at Kyoka curiously. I call it like I see it. She shrugged at him. And the code talks about sisters, not moms. Besides, I'm not a bro, technically speaking. You are. He started to ask, but trailed off because it was rude and personal. I'm flexible. She smirked. I looked again at her earlobes, and my habit of evaluating quirks kicked in, though this time in a non-combat direction. Long, prehensile earlobes, capable of transmitting sonic pulses that could. I went red and cut off that line of thought. Is that a problem? She asked, an edge to her voice. Nope, I said immediately. Kyoka is still Kyoka. I don't care, Shiro agreed. I was just a little surprised. Miss Midnight is openly bi, even if she usually goes after men. Kyoka shrugged. I'm not hiding anything, I just don't see a reason to actively announce it either. It's the 23rd century, but there are still some jerks and bigots out there. True enough, Shiro-kun said sadly. I nodded. Well, I'll see you two tomorrow. He waved. Have a good night. This really isn't an issue? Kyoka asked again, a bit more cautiously. Kyoka, I smiled softly. My powers only showed up just over a year ago. I spent over a decade being mostly bullied or avoided because Deku is quirkless. So no, there is no way I'm going to reject you or tease you over who you are or aren't attracted to. Even if that means I won't join your harem? She needled me lightly, looking relieved. I guess that means I'm not your type. I chuckled weakly, deflated by the fact she wasn't going to let the harem thing go. Sorry, she said more gently. For guys, I prefer the quiet, brooding pretty boy type. Like Todoroki-san? I queried thoughtfully. Oh look, there's your mom. She changed the subject. Mom waved to us as she exited the building and began to walk to the gate. Should I keep this secret? I said quickly and softly. It's not a secret, she answered before my mom reached us. But I'd rather tell people myself. Hi, you too, Mom said as she reached us. Ready to go? I nodded. Why does this feel like an intervention? Kyoka asked. She tried to sound sarcastic, but was obviously nervous. We had gotten back to our apartment. Sue knew the code, in case of emergencies with her siblings, so everyone else was already inside. We led Kyoka to the table. Mom sat on her right, I sat across from her, and Momo took the spot on her left. Ami stood supportively by her, while Ochako, Cassandra, Mikoto, and Sue hovered around us. No, I said quickly. It's nothing like that. See, we are all an AG group, separate from the regular study group and the rest of the class. Like I said earlier, we have a special method of training, and we wanted to ask if you were interested in joining. By which he means, Mikoto interjected. He has a special method of training that he shares with us, and he was trying to decide if he could and should invite you, and Ami and Momo convinced him he should. Okay, Kyoka sounded dubious. Then why the theatrics? There are certain limitations, I said, and well, it can be dangerous. But most of all, it needs to be secret. If we let you in, you can't tell anyone outside the group. Which, Sue piped up, in the interest of full disclosure, includes All Might Sensei. And all of you have done this training? She looked around. At least 3 times each, Momo said. And Izuku isn't joking about the potential danger or the need for secrecy. So it's just Izuku now. Kyoka's grin returned. Yes, Momo blushed slightly. And I have invited him to call me Momo. The long-lobed purplet studied us. You don't need to decide right now. I gave her the same out. Think about it tonight. Maybe talk to the others. They can't give you specifics, but... She held up a hand to cut me off. Would any of you back out now? She asked. If you could tell your past self to reject him, or have your memories altered or something, would you do it? No way, Ochako said immediately. The others shook their heads. /no/ Cassandra signed, looking around at us warmly. / and not just because of how much it has let me improve. / Cassandra also says no, Momo translated. And not just because of the benefits of the training. Since when do you know JSL Yamamo? Kyoka's eyes narrowed. Since I took Izuku up on his offer, the tall girl answered. Kyoka considered it a bit more. Then she shrugged with a wry grin. What the heck? She said. If this is how you 3 kept jumping ahead of the rest of us, I'd be a fool to turn you down. And I trust that Ami and Yamamo wouldn't let the rest of you prank me. I'm in. Guild invite Jaira Kyoka, I said. And she almost jumped out of her chair. So the world is actually a video game, Kyoka said once I finished explaining. You're the protagonist, and we are your NPC companions. I wouldn't say that, I countered. Right, Mikoto agreed. Then she smirked at me. The world is an MMO, and he's one of the players. We're still his companion NPCs. I don't believe that, I told them both. Just because that's how my power expresses itself, doesn't mean that's how reality works. And it doesn't mean that everyone else isn't a real person, just as much the protagonist of their own lives. I'm not an NPC companion, Sue said. I'm a love interest. And now I can see why you are the Meta no Kishiden, Kyoka chuckled. And I was just ribbing you. I'm curious, Ami said softly. What do you mean that's not how reality works, Izuku-kun? We have all seen it. Right, Cassandra agreed. Well, I hemmed as I gathered my thoughts. I mean, yes, my power does work and it changes the world. Just like other powers, or even just people moving and breathing. What I meant was that, like Momo said yesterday, maybe there are other gamers, other systems that work differently. Work differently? Ochako prompted. Without getting too nerdy or meta, I hope. I explained. Think about it like Fahrenheit versus centigrade. Two different scales for temperature. Maybe there is another gamer out there who sees more or fewer attributes, or on a different scale. Like D&D versus GRPS. Ami mused. Everyone else looked at her, confused. And my heart might have skipped a beat. They are gaming systems, she explained sheepishly. I looked into RPGs after Izuku told us. D&D has a system where you pick a specific job called a class, and that determines what you can do. And GURPS is similar to Izuku's power, but with fewer attributes, and generic points that can be spent on attributes, skills, and talents. But attributes and talents cost more than just 1 point. That is interesting speculation. Mom spared the others, used to me and knowing I might go off and start muttering about various tabletop and video games and which one my power resembled most. But I think we should try to run Gyro-san through a dungeon. That's true. Momo nodded. Talking about it is not the same as experiencing it. Who will go? Kyoka asked. You said the party can only be 6, and there are 9 of us. More like 5 and 8, Tsu mused. Since Izuku has to be 1 in the party. I'm afraid I can't today, Momo said regretfully, taking a stack of papers out of her backpack. Even though the class representative meeting was cancelled, I still have all of this to read and fill out. You can stay here until we are done, if you like, my mom offered. We will grab some takeout with our earnings, and whoever isn't in the party is still welcome to eat with us. It sounds like you are planning to go in. Mikoto grinned at Mom, then turned to me. Well, I had a turn yesterday, so I was thinking of borrowing your destiny, and seeing just how Cassandra's quirk and fighting skills translate into a fighting game. Then the electrokinetic frowned at me and added, You do have some fighting games, right? I nodded. Mikoto grinned. Cassandra looked nervous but also excited. I realized what they were doing. All Might was the highest level in the guild, naturally. But glancing at the guild tab, out of those of us here, Momo, Mikoto, and Cassandra were the highest levels. Momo at 23 and Cassandra and Mikoto both at 22. Mom was 20, I was 19, Tsu was 18, Ami and Ochako were both 17. Kyoka was the lowest. Since I had scanned her on the first day, she had only reached level 13. Part of me wanted to point out that levels were not everything. That abilities and skills could be improved on their own. And that the most important thing is how we used it. But coming from the one who gave them that information, it might seem hypocritical. So, I decided to just take them up on their offer. Party disband, I said. Party invite Mom, Tsu, Ami, Ochako, Kyoka. I decided to try the invite with only their given names, or even nicknames in Tsu and Mom's cases. The windows popped up like normal, so I guess it worked. So what kind of dungeon are we going to run? Tsu asked me. I was thinking about level 2 of the Pencil of Solitude, I told her. Pencil of Solitude? Kyoka raised an eyebrow at me. It was the first dungeon we went into, I explained. A very nice UA brand pencil. After we cleared it, or cleared the first level, now that we know there are more levels to them, we moved some furniture and books in there. We used it for physical workouts after it got too cold to go to Indoro, Tsu added. Or just as a nice quiet place to relax, Mom said. Like a prototype guild hall, Ami noted. Except we didn't know we'd have a guild or a guild hall back then, I said, but nodded my agreement. Izuku, Mom addressed me. I think you should wait and try the second level of the pencil someday after school. Why's that? Ochako asked. Are you worried about something, Inko-san? Tsu prompted. To be honest, Mom smiled. I am somewhat concerned that the enemies of the second level will be very strong, or that there will be other threats we haven't faced. So I would prefer if you went in with Tashinori in the party. My eyes widened at her calling All Might by his given name. And not just because he hadn't revealed it to Momo and the others yet. They could see it in the guild tab, but I wasn't sure if any of them had. But that's not the only reason. Mom said, then she scratched the back of her head. Just like Izuku, Tsu whispered to Ami. I was hoping we could dive into this. My mother pointed into the kitchen, and a certain utensil flew across the room. A frying pan? Ochako sounded confused. Grandma's frying pan? I prompted Mom. I thought that was too heavy for your quirk. It was. She caught it. Until last month. Is it that heavy? Ami asked. Mom handed it to her, and the hydrokinetic almost dropped. It's a 38-centimeter cast iron skillet, I told them, weighing 5.5 kilograms. Before I got the gamer, you could only pull about 1 kilogram to you, right, Mom? But why is it so heavy? Ochako asked. None of my mom's pans weigh this much. My mother was old school, Mom told them. She believed that if a frying pan wasn't strong enough to crack a skull, then it wasn't worth owning. Not that I would ever use it as a weapon. Analyze. Inherited fry pan. A heavy-duty tool capable of frying eggs or stopping small arms fire. Durability, 410/450. Quality, 5/7. Rank **. Why do you want to go into Grandma's pan? I asked. Mostly because I am curious to see what sort of bonuses it gets, Mom admitted sheepishly. Like a bonus to cooking skill, or maybe it will heat up faster. Well, I held out my hand, and Ochako, who had taken it from Ami, handed me the pan. I am willing to try it, if everyone else is. Sure, Kyoka shrugged. Not that I have any grounds to protest. I'm good with it, Tsu said. Especially if it might make Inko Oba-chan's cooking even better. Ami nodded, and Ochako bobbed her head vigorously. We spent a few minutes getting ready. Mom and I changed into our workout outfits, and Tsu lent hers to Kyoka and instead wore her prototype uniform. Ami and Ochako borrowed my other 2 tracksuits. While the ladies got changed, I asked Cass and the others for a favor. Okay, I said. Create reflective dungeon. Select time dilation. 1x, 2x. I hit the button for double speed, and then our apartment vanished. Dungeon entry: inherited fry pan. Mooks, 50/50ths. Mid-boss, 9/9ths unspawned. Boss, 1 out of 1 unspawned. That's a lot of bosses, Tsu noted, looking at the screen from beside me. 1 for every 5. Ami agreed. Much more than Izuku-kun's dungeon, or the sequel book. The most we've seen before is 7-1 ribbit, Tsu continued, in one of the cheap pencils. Testing, I said in guild chat. Cassandra? Mikoto? Momo? All Might? Can anyone hear me? We can hear you, Ami told me. But the guild members not in the dungeon didn't answer. Nor did I hear the expected contact from any of them. Nice castle, Kyoka whistled, looking to my left. I'm more interested in that, Ochako said nervously, as she stared behind me. We all turned, and everyone but me gasped. We were on a grassy field, on an island. The weather was mild, sunny, not too warm, and slightly overcast. Behind us, now that we had turned, was a 5-story tall European castle. It had a drawbridge gate, more than half the outer wall's height, but no moat. The courtyard, if it was a normal castle, could easily hold a football pitch. It was pretty impressive, and ultimately our destination. But it wasn't what had our attention. I said we were on an island. But unlike the pencil, it wasn't an island in the ocean. Or a lake or river. It wasn't even a floating island. No, this island was in a barbecue. Not completely literally. I couldn't see grill slats above us or anything. But the lake it was in was one of roaring flames and mounds of glowing hot charcoal. The air warped visibly above it from the heat. The inferno spread out as far as we could see. Despite that, like I mentioned, the temperature around us was fine. We were only a few meters from the edge, so it should have been warmer, possibly even dangerous. It seemed that we weren't entirely safe. As we watched, the grass at the edge began to smolder, and catch fire. A small stone seemed to change from granite into another lump of coal. It was not fast, but the fire was consuming the island. Based on approximations of the rate it is spreading, Ami looked back and forth. We have 2.5 to 3 hours before it reaches the castle. So it's a timed dungeon? Kyoka asked. You didn't mention those. We haven't seen one before, Sue countered flatly. But we've had timed quests, right? Ochako pondered. So maybe this is something similar? Mandatory dungeon quest alert. Restore the core. Defeat the boss who is draining the dungeon shield core before it is too late. Rewards. Bonus talent for each party member. Hidden reward. Failure penalties. The destruction of the dungeon and the item that it reflects. Death of all party members still in the dungeon when time runs out. Time limit, 177 minutes. Accept. Just under 3 hours, Ami noted. And if we don't do it, Inko-basan loses her pan. Sue frowned. It seems like the gamer is upping the ante, Ochako said. So we should get moving. Kyoka nodded. My pen isn't worth anyone's life, Mom protested. No, it isn't, I agreed. But we have 3 hours. So we'll go until we have a half hour left. Then we'll reevaluate. Does that sound fair to everyone? My classmates all indicated their approval. Mom sighed, and then she nodded. I opened my inventory, took out 2 folding chairs, and then set 25-gallon drum of distilled water across them. How much water do you need, Ami? I prompted. Let's start with 3 liters, she said quickly. Just what all do you have in there? Kyoka asked, after I decanted the water and returned everything. I'll tell you later, I responded. We turned and not quite ran towards the gate. There was an armored figure on either side, but I wasn't detecting any key from them. As soon as we got close, they sprang to life, lunging at us. They didn't have weapons, but swung their steel gauntlets at Sue and I. Froppy dodged the attack, but I blocked it to get a feel for their power. -10 health, -5 energy. Not that strong, but I didn't want to take too many of their hits either. Analyze. Name, Armor Golem. While the spells required are more precise than a standard iron golem, it takes less material and thus less mana. Plus, you can stick someone inside as either defense or punishment. Level, 24. Health, 845/845. Stamina, 750/750. Mana, 125/125. Suchan, hold him for a second, Ochako requested, darting forward. Sue's tongue wrapped the golem attacking her. She seemed to struggle a bit, but was able to hold it. Then the brunette tapped it. She pointed back behind us, and Sue nodded. My froggy friend somersaulted. The armor was flung at the extension of her tongue. It flew away. Unlike my internal dungeon, there was no ceiling. Nor did the shield mentioned by the quest stop it. So it just kept going. Until it was well past the beach and over the flames. Then Ochako clapped her hands. Its weight restored, the golem crashed into the barbecue. It sank into the coals, melting. Level up. Level 14. Attribute points, +5. Skill points, +2. Talent points, +0. The message popped up in front of Kyoka's face, even as I still sparred with the other golem. Kyoka, I called out to her. She seemed shocked by both the attack and the message, so I tried to get her head back in the game. Can you resonate metal and make it shatter? Wah. She blinked, then swiped away the screen. Yes, usually. It depends on the metal. Ami, help me hold it, so she can try, I suggested lightly. The bluette nodded. I pinned one side of the remaining golem. I was not tall enough to grab both of its arms, but I held its left arm tight to its torso. I also stomped its foot with one of mine. I used my tactile TK to hold fast the parts one was touching, and anchor myself to the ground with my other foot. Ami locked its other side by filling its joints with water, and then holding the liquid in place. It would have been easier if she could have frozen it. I decided to talk to Momo about the endothermic pellets she had used. Were they safe to carry around, and could Ami get some? With the golem secured, Kyoka jogged over to it. Staying as far away as possible, her earlobes extended. They touched the breastplate in 2 different spots. The golem began to vibrate, and then whine. Above it, the HP bar Analyze provided began to plummet. After only a few seconds, the main piece of armor shattered. The remaining pieces fell, and then faded. All except for one steel glove. And when I touched that, it also vanished. 2 down, 58 to go, Ochako exclaimed happily. And it didn't even take us 3 minutes. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I tried to gently calm her. My key sense doesn't work on them, so it might not be that easy to track them down. And we don't know how strong the bosses will be, Sue added. Then we better keep moving, Kyoka smirked. We had 40 minutes left when the final boss spawned. There were 2 other mooks left, so it was probably not alone. The throne room also unlocked. The 5 fire elemental mid-bosses had been a problem. Only Ami's water and my key had been able to hit them safely. There hadn't been anything around to use as a weapon. The 4 iron golems mid-bosses had been much easier. Ochako made them weightless. They were just under her 3-ton limit. Then we pushed them into the air and Kyoka broke them. She was now up to level 15, and the rest of us had each gained 1 level. I was close to another level, so I was hopeful for the boss. Mom was unhappy that she had not had as much to contribute. The monsters had all been unarmed, so there had not been much around for her to pull in and prevent them from using against us. Or even just pass to me for telekinetic ammo. The throne room was not quite what we were expecting. There was a raised dais with a big, fancy chair, and 2 smaller chairs on either side. The boss and 2 armored golems were seated there. There was also a table on the platform, in front of the throne. Below the dais was a larger, square table. On either side of that, there were mirrored kitchens set up. It looked kind of familiar, but I didn't recognize it. Mom must have, because she sighed in dismay. Analyze. I checked out the boss. Name, Cast Iron Cook. Legally distinct OC. Do not copy. Do not sue. Level 30. Health, 1307/1307. Stamina, 1148/1148. Mana, 218/218. It looked like the armor golems. Except instead of a breastplate, the chest was an old-style coal oven, with flames flickering visibly inside. Plus it was at least 3 meters tall. Cast Iron Cook stood up from his throne. He picked up a frying pan that was a duplicate of the one we were in, except double the size. In his left hand he equipped a bread knife the size of a katana. He pointed the pan at us. Challengers, he growled. Prepare to cook. Why do I think he's not challenging us to a baking competition? Kyoka asked sarcastically. Today's special ingredient, hero student. He seemed to answer her. Mom, can you get his pan? I asked, following it up with Asgard Smash. The ball of ki didn't stagger the boss, and did less damage to his HP than I would have hoped. Maybe it was the level difference again, or maybe it was resistant. No, she shook her head after trying. It is too heavy for me. But I can. The knife ripped out of his left hand and flew into Mom's grasp. She dropped into a basic kung fu stance, brandishing the stolen blade. Which surprised me a bit. I remembered she had learned kung fu from the scrolls. But she had never used it before, or even practiced it that I knew. Nor was I aware that she knew how to fight with a knife. When you say too heavy, do you mean weight or mass? Ochako prompted, touching one of the side tables and then pushing it lightly towards Ami. What do you mean? Mom countered. I can make things weightless, Ochako said. but they still have mass. When Izuku uses his telekinesis, both seem to matter. Moving things that are weightless is easier, but if two items are both weightless, the one with more mass is still harder for him to move. I guess I'm not sure, Mom said. Try it, I suggested, pointing to the floating table. It was a heavy, metallic, food service type table. It had to weigh at least as much as the boss's pan. Said boss had just reached me. It swung its improvised club at my head. I ducked under. Then I fired a punch at its wrist, hoping the limb armor was thinner than the chest seemed to be. I smacked it with a clang. My knuckles were left stinging for a moment, but didn't damage me. Unfortunately, it didn't do much to the boss, either. Ami and Tsu took on the two mooks. Tsu led with her standard double drop kick and then jump off combo. But this time she also snagged the head with her tongue. The armor golem's parts were not physically connected, but they didn't come apart easily either. But using the strength in both her legs and tongue, Tsu wrenched the helmet free. Unlike a living being, having its head removed only moderately damaged the construct and didn't seem to inconvenience it. She snapped her head to the side, tossing the helmet to me. I caught it, and then pushed it forward. Hogwarts smash! The mook's helmet crashed into the boss's with an oddly harmonious ringing. Ami's water soaked into the empty armor. She focused it around each of the joints in turn, expanding the weak points until the distorted and the lower portion of each limb fell away. It took less than a minute for her to reduce the mook to a shuddering chest plate and helmet, with only a sliver of health left. Unfortunately, Mom was not able to pull the table with her quirk. Which I suppose made sense. Ochako's quirk nullified gravity on the target, while Mom's quirk was gravity-based. Izuku! Mom called for my attention, and I dove back. The fact that Mom's quirk didn't work did not prevent the two of them from just grabbing the table and pushing it. It floated towards the two-story ceiling. Once it was over the boss, Mom shouted and I cleared the way. The table crashed into the cook, knocking him onto his back and pinning him. He immediately started to wrestle and jostle with it. Drive 4. Key reinforcement. I charged in while he was still trapped. It cost me a few HP, but I ripped the pan from his hand. Then I reversed it, and began to slam it into his right arm and shoulder. The armor dented. His health chipped lower. And most importantly, I prevented him from using both hands to free himself. Ami then arrived to hold his other arm steady enough for Kyoka to attack it. She jabbed her jacks into it, and the upper arm parts cracked, leaving the gauntlet lying in the ground. He roared, and the door on his broiler chest broke open, spewing out flames. The table melted into slag. And even though it was nowhere near the fires, the handle of the pan grew too hot for me to handle. I dropped it as Tsu joined the rest of us, her mook defeated and vanishing. Now what? Kyoka asked nervously, as the boss's remaining body turned red hot. We have another table, Ochako said. First turn on the other faucet, I told them. Give Ami more water to work with. Her first shot as the boss's second phase had boiled away almost instantly. So I ran over to one of the kitchen setups, and turned both handles on all the way. Then I bent and partially crimped the spigot, so the water was spraying at the boss. There wasn't enough pressure for a steady stream, but the liquid spray still lightly covered him. It didn't seem to be damaging him, or even cooling him off much, but it seemed to be keeping the air from getting too hot, and was providing Ami ammo. Tsu took up my call, and was less subtle about it. She just broke off the faucet with her tongue, resulting in a small geyser. Mom had her own idea. She ran over alongside Tsu, and opened up both doors on the giant refrigerator. It was empty, but the insides were still cold. I followed suit on my side. The boss seemed to complete his power-up sequence, and decided to attack me again, which suited me just fine. I grabbed the heaviest kettle, and threw it at him. It didn't do much, but kept him focused on me. Then he lifted his visor, and a screaming cone of flames shot at me. I dodged behind the kitchen's double oven, expecting the appliance would be able to take the heat if only for a moment. When the fire breath? Or was it fire vision? Either way, when the boss paused, I peeked out. The front half of the oven was gone. I lobbed 2 normal-sized pans at his head, though only one hit. Then the second table hit his back. Rather than floating it, Mom, Ochako, and Sue had grabbed its legs and charged it into him, broadside. They let go and backed off as soon as they hit. The next instant it was starting to glow red. But heating that metal bled off some of the heat from the golem boss. This allowed Ami and Kyoka to act. Earphone jacks connected to the construct with columns of water. It evaporated quickly, but Ami kept supplying it. Her face scrunched, struggling to keep the heat and sound from each blowing the liquid apart. Water wasn't the best transmitter of sound, but the two of them were making it work. The boss began to lose health again, and his body cooled in the process. Metal began to whine from the combination of sonic resonance and improper thermal cycling. Izuku. Mom tossed me the iron glove Kyoka had liberated from the golem. It was weightless, and also full of water. I held it carefully, so as not to make Ami work any harder preventing spills. The boss was starting to turn, so I threw a rolling pin at his knee. That got his attention for the moment I needed. Hogwarts smash, I called, and then for good measure added, Asgard smash. The TK attack shot the gauntlet like an anime mecha's robot punch, curled fist first. I applied an extra bit of telekinesis to keep it on track, and it went straight through the open door on the golem's chest. It slammed into the back plate, and the water splashed out over its flaming innards. Then the ki blast passed through the gap, denting the oven outwards. Its hit points plummeted, and the metal began to gray again. But the former inferno still flickered inside. And the boss finally seemed to realize I was not the worst threat, that my attack wouldn't have been half as powerful without Ami, and that Kyoka had done the most damage. It turned towards them. I saw what I needed. A thermal glove, and more traditional oven mitt. I pulled them both on and charged the boss's back. I focused on the bulge I had just created. Minnesota smash! I drove my doubly protected fist into the iron. 200 health. That put me below half. My arm cracked. But not as badly as the metal did. The boss's HP hit 0. It collapsed in a heap and the fire inside went out. That was tough, considering its level and the rest of the dungeon, Sue noted. Mainly because we couldn't touch it, Kyoka said. Still, we did it. Ochako pumped her fist. Everyone, I called out nervously. The quest counter is still running. Only then did we realize the boss had not disintegrated. It began to creak. To glow again. To stand. I thought we beat it, Sue said. I guess not, Kyoka countered. The quest, I realized. It said the boss is draining the shield. The boss's HP bar was up almost a quarter at this point. We must have to stop that first, Ami deduced. Look for the shield core, I told them. I'll try to keep it down. Ki reinforcement off, ki regeneration. With my covered hand, I started punching the armor as it started to reassemble itself. Ami joined me, whipping at it with the water. We were fighting a losing battle, it was recovering faster than we were damaging it. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the 22 minutes we had left were ticking away at triple speed. Ochako and Mom started to ransack the other, more intact kitchen. Then checked in the oven, the cupboards, even the blast chiller. The throne? Sue asked Kyoka. That would make sense. She agreed, and they ran to it. Kyoka touched the arm with her earlobes. The ornate chair rattled. There's a space under the seat, she called out. Sue ripped off the cushion and threw it away. My mitt caught fire. Ami splashed it out, but the next hit I landed dried it and reignited it. I took both mitt and glove off, and began to blast it with my smashes instead. The Gundor smash did not cut the armor, and the Asgard smash was only moderately effective. I realized quickly my best bet was using Hogwarts Smash to hammer it with bits of itself, especially if the bits were from different parts of the body. It still was regaining health overall. It's a combination lock, Sue told us. Does anyone have any idea what the combination might be? Yeah, Kyoka said. 312 Hz. The lock snapped, and they opened the hidey hole. It's a green crystal ball, Sue reported, with some chains wrapped around it. Chains that look like the armor and are glowing purple. I'm going to try taking them off. I can't, they are too strong. I got it, Kyoka smirked. Don't damage the crystal, Sue said gently. Careful, Mom warned at the same time. I know, Kyoka said, though she did not sound as confident. She touched the first chain gingerly, as if expecting it to shock her or drain her. Nothing seemed to happen, and a moment later, the link crumbled to dust. One down. Sue grabbed the rest of that chain and pulled free. One more, ah! She dropped the chain, as it turned white hot. Ami, go help. I started to ask. No, I've got this, Kyoka said more firmly. She grimaced, and jabbed her earlobes down again. Her face twisted in pain, and we could hear sizzling. In spite of Kyoka's protest, Ami turned the water from the further sink into a shower on the throne dais. Then we heard another snap. Sue reached in and pulled out the second binding. The boss stopped regenerating, but did not stop moving. Go help them, Ami told me. Before I could start moving, Ochako reached us. She was carrying an ice cream maker, and she began to beat on the boss with it. I guess she was going for irony, and the industrial refrigerators must have been above her weight limit. I raced over to the platform. The chains were still radiating heat. It might have been generated by magic, but the reaction was natural, now that it was here. I took Sue's burned hand in my right, and Kyoka's scorched earlobes in my left. Ki healing, I said. I focused on their injuries, not just channeling the ki, but also my feelings. My gratitude to them, my intense desire for them to be uninjured. Level up notices popped up in front of all 6 of us, as Ami and Ochako finished the boss once and for all. I had the panel closed, not needing the distraction. Kyoka and Sue's burns turned to blisters, then to pink flesh. Then finally, and just as my energy dipped below 5%, they healed completely. Thanks, Izuku. Sue flexed her healed fingers, and then put her hand over mine. That's useful. Kyoka touched her earlobes gingerly, and then more firmly. But it's also limited, I said sadly. The more recent the injury, the better. And it can't regrow lost limbs or anything. That reminded me. I now had built up a number of unspent talents. So I went in and purchased Psychometabolism Basic. I would check out the skills later. Are we done here? Ochako asked as Mom and the others joined us. The clock is stopped. I switched back to quests. With 8 minutes left. I thought we had more time, Mom said. We did, I told her. But the clock started going faster when the boss was regenerating. Should we leave? Ami asked. I don't see why not, Sue said. Why does Midoriya-san still have the knife? Kyoka asked. I thought monsters vanished when they died in here. But it's smaller now, Ochako noted. It's a drop item, I said. We've seen that before. The military survival knife in the first dungeon, that Inko-bachan uses for cooking. Sue listed them. Both of Cassandra's tonfas, and a second survival knife that Izuku keeps in his inventory. Should we finish the quest first? Mom said thoughtfully. No use showing it off to the others. Sure, I agreed. Then I hit the accept button. Bonus talent received. Shop I unlocked. Heat resistance skill unlock, condition 2/3 met, endure extended period of heat, complete fire element dungeon. What did everyone get? Ochako asked. I received a talent that reduces the cost of my hydrokinesis skills, Ami said. I got tough as nails, finally, Sue told me and Mom. Then she explained for the others. It improves my physical resistance skill. My new talent is called Knife Mastery, Mom said. It combines knife fighting, which I didn't have, and butchering into a single skill, and gives the new skill a bonus for other knife-related skills I had, like cooking and first aid. And according to the Knife Mastery skill, I can use it in place of those other skills, when I am doing something with a knife. Mine is called Samurai Jack, Kyoka said. It lets me turn my jacks into katanas. She lifted one earlobe, and the metallic connector at the end did indeed morph into a katana shape. It didn't gain any mass, so it was only a few centimeters long. Pretty good for stabbing my jacks into things that aren't the standard ports. Or just stabbing in general, I guess. She returned the jack to its regular form, and then frowned. You know. She opened her window, flipped to the Talents tab, and bought one. Her cable-like earlobes changed into what looked like a braid of both skin and wire. And her jacks were a white metal. Armored cable, she grinned. Since this all just reinforced that my jacks are a bit of a weakness. Well, now my jacks are partly titanium and my lobes have a mesh of steel, aluminum, and skin. Then she changed them into micro-katana mode again, and the tiny blades looked like they were made of Damascus steel. Or maybe Damascus titanium. If talents can change both the shape and composition. I began to mumble, taking my notebook out of my inventory. I flipped right to Kyoka's page. Maybe there are other options. A talent to make them USB ports? Izuku later, Sue said. Sorry. I smiled weakly. Then prompted. What did you get, Ochako? I got studious, she answered. Which is good, I think. I've been needing to study a lot, so this should help. And what about you, Izuku? Mom asked. It's another gamer talent, I told them. It's called Shop Analyze. It says I can buy things from my inventory tab. Inventory. Whoa. What is it? More than one voice asked, but I was too gobsmacked to pick out who. So I turned my screen so they could see it. Minor Health Potion, Ami read. Restores 100 health or 5% of total health, whichever is higher. 50,000 yen? Ochako demanded incredulously. The rest are more, Sue noted flatly. There were also minor potions for stamina, mana, psions, and ki. Those cost 60,000, and only restored 60 points or 3%. Then there was magic duct tape, silver, that restored durability to items, but otherwise had the same cost and values as the health potion. And apples, Sue noticed. At least those are around market price. I guess that could be good in an emergency. Mom sighed. But I think the sports drinks, while slower and weaker, are better to go with for now. If there isn't anything else, I asked, should we go back? I took out my phone. It was 7:27. Everyone nodded. Dungeon exit. Inherited Fry Pan Dungeon Level 1 complete. Defeated 60 enemies, rank +++. Defeated mid-boss, rank +++++++++++. Defeated boss, rank +. Level 1 cleared, rank +. Inherited Fry Pan. A heavy-duty tool capable of frying eggs or stopping small arms fire. Durability, 411/450. Quality, 5/7. Rank, +**********. Rank bonus. Auto repair, low. That's nice. Mom seemed happy. How did it go? Mikoto asked. Sue and Ochako started to tell her what happened. You didn't hear me? On guild chat? I asked Momo. No, she shook her head. And I'm guessing you didn't hear us either. But All Might did, and we could all still hear each other. So guild chat doesn't cross dimensional barriers. I mused. Not yet, Momo studied thoughtfully. Given everything you've said and shown us about upgrading abilities, that may come later. Speaking of upgrades, Yamamo. Kyoka leaned in close to her friend. Check these out. All right. Mom called for our attention. I hope no one minds ramen. I have placed an order for dinner. Izuku, Ichiraku will have a party platter for 15 for you to pick up at 6:20. I looked at my phone, and since it had synced back up with the server, it now read 6:01. But there are only 9 of us. Momo frowned. Well, the 6 of us did just get quite a workout, Mom explained. So we might eat a little extra. And if we don't eat it all. Second day ramen? I asked her excitedly. Mom nodded. Sue licked her lips. And the other ladies all looked confused. Aren't the noodles all mushy? Ami asked. No, Inko Bachan fries them up crispy. Sue started to explain Mom's semi-secret recipe for the leftovers. You'd better get going, Izuku, Mom told me. / do you need some help? / Cassandra signed, not wanting to broadcast to All Might or the others having other conversations. No, he has it, Mom said somewhat forcefully. I'll be back in about a half hour, I told Cass. After Izuku was gone, Midoriya Inko gathered the girls together. Sue was standing next to her, and they were looking sternly at the others. Now I want to know, Inko asked sternly. What are each of your intentions for my Izuku? Chapter 21. Inko immediately held up her hand. I don't necessarily mean romantically, she told the girls. Though if any of you are thinking about that, I would be happy to discuss it with you more privately. She watched as all of the students blushed, except for Jairo-chan. Inko knew what Tsu's red cheeks meant. And given the way Ami-chan was glancing at the others, and the intensity of Uraraka-chan's forehead to neck coloring, she had a good idea of what the two of them were feeling. Yaoyorozu-chan appeared to be the opposite. Rather than thinking about her son in any way, that tallest girl was simply embarrassed to be talking about boys with friends. Inko could not get a good read on Cassandra or Mikoto. Those girls' blushes could go either way in her opinion. It is just, Inko continued, then she paused. I was going to say my Izuku has had a hard life. But that isn't fair to children who are abandoned, who don't have enough food or a roof over their head. Izuku has had more than his share of troubles, but I made sure he was always cared for, even if I couldn't always support him like I should have. They looked at her curiously. Izuku always wanted to be a hero, she said, but I just couldn't support him, could not tell him that he could be a hero. Because Izuku is quirkless. It is easy to forget with the power the gamer gives him, but he doesn't have a quirk. And because of that, he did not have friends. He has not been treated well or fairly by the children around him. Because of that, he is both cautious around people, but also desperate for friends. Inko looked at them sternly again. That is what I meant, she told the ladies. Do you want to train with Izuku, to be classmates who work together? Or do you genuinely want to be his friend? It is fine either way. Izuku won't reject you if you only want to use his power to get stronger, as long as you keep it secret. And I won't force you to leave, as long as you treat him kindly. I just ask you to think about it, and not lead him on. They all considered her words. I was jogging to Ichiraku, but my mind was going even faster. Mom obviously wanted to talk to them about something, without me there. But what? If it was a sitcom, she'd be telling them an embarrassing story. Like the first time I had an American hamburger. But my life was more like a hero manga or American comic. Though there was that one story where Peter and MJ told Normie about when toddler Mayday discovered her wall crawling. No, more likely I had done something, and Mom was apologizing. Like calling them all by their given names. Sure, they had all said I could. And Sue and Mikoto had been pretty insistent. But maybe I had been too forward with the others. That, or maybe it was in the dungeon. I had tried to ask and suggest instead of giving orders. I could have messed up, been too rude and commanding. Or had I been looking at them inappropriately? It could have been any number of things. Of course, maybe I was just being self-centered and a little paranoid. She could have wanted to talk about something that would have been embarrassing if I was around. Sue had told me once that Mom had lectured her about not having the right workout clothing, especially wearing a normal bra instead of a sports bra. And yes, I knew that the last part was the real reason she told me the story. And Mom was even more into the fashion world now. She could be giving the others the same talk, especially in light of them needing to borrow gear. She could have been measuring them for new outfits. "Hello, Midoriya-kun." Iam's voice roused me from my thoughts as I entered the store on autopilot. "Ichiraku Iam. Quirk Butcher." Her quirk lets her cut meat and even bone with her bare hands, better than any metal or ceramic blade. But it doesn't work on anything alive, and only works on animal tissue, so she still needs a knife to chop veggies. I liked Iam. She always treated me normally. Part of it was because her father Tucci, the shop's semi-retired owner, was also quirkless. But mainly, she was just a nice lady. She also insisted I call her by her first name, telling me that Ichiraku-san was her father more than once. "Hello, Iam-san." I smiled at her lightly. "How are you?" "Fine," she smiled back. "And you?" "Good," I told her. She lifted 2 bags onto the counter. I had already transferred money from my wallet to its physical counterpart, which I took out of my pocket. "This is a big order for you too," she said. "Is Inko-san making that recipe she won't share again?" "Probably," I nodded. "But we are having a study group at my place, since they didn't let us stay at school today. So this is to feed everyone. We still hope to have some leftovers." "Oh, I heard about that," she said and shook her head. "The press breaking into UA. And I thought that they weren't supposed to become part of the story themselves. I guess they got too worked up," I said uncertainly. I handed her the money, and she gave me the change. "So this study group?" she asked conspiratorially. "Any girls in it?" I could practically feel myself start to blush, only to have the cold spike of Gamer's mind shut it down. "Yes," I chuckled weakly instead. "Sue and a few others." "Really?" she grinned. Then she looked past me and her smile slipped. The cold in my spine hardened, even before I glanced back. They were wearing matching green leather jackets, black ball caps, and had a bandana of their noses and mouths. The first one in was fairly tall and muscular, with tufts of dark blue hair showing under his hat. The second one was shorter and very skinny, with longer, off-white hair. Most importantly, the bigger crook was carrying some kind of small revolver, while the second one had a hatchet. "Analyze," I whispered. "Name, Iori Junpei. Race, human, quirk metagene positive. Age 23. Level 13. Health, 144/144. Stamina, 99/99. Quirk, cash register. Call tell approximately how much money he can get out of something or someone, less than 1,000 yen, 1,000 to 50,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 50,000, and so on. That was the small guy. Legal name, Tatsumi Kanji. Villain name, Brick House. Race, human, quirk metagene positive. Age 25. Level, 16. Health, 233/233. Stamina, 160/171. Quirk, brick built. He can turn his arms from the shoulder down into clay bricks. No increased strength or defense, it is mostly cosmetic. The bigger guy was a bit tougher. I could have easily taken them both, but I was worried Brick House might shoot at Iam first. I didn't think I was faster than a speeding bullet. I also might have gotten in trouble if I used my powers, but I was less concerned about that. I suppressed the urge to sigh, on the off chance that would set them off. "Girl!" Brick House barked, pointing the gun right at her. "Empty the register. Now!" "Can someone please call the police?" I asked my party silently. Ichiraku is being robbed. "Right now?" Kyoka countered, shocked. Are you okay? Ami demanded. The others remained silent. I'm fine, I told them, as I piled the money on the counter, just a couple of crooks. The only problem is one of them has a gun, and I'm afraid I might get hurt. Not you? Ochako asked. No, I said flatly. With TK armor and Gamer's body, he'd have to hit me with all 6 shots to hurt me enough for it to show. And as soon as he was out of bullets, I'd take him down. What is this? Brickhouse snarled. There's only like 25,000 here. You said this place was in the 1 to 5 million yen range. He glared at his partner. It was, Iori-san protested. Is there a safe in the back? The gunman demanded. There is, Iam said gently. But I just sent my assistant to make a deposit and get change for the week, so it is empty. He didn't appear to believe her. But Iam was saved when Iori-san gasped. It's the kid. He pointed his axe at me. He's worth 1 to 5 million. I frowned. I didn't have anywhere near that much money on me. But I did have it in my wallet. I was planning to go to the bank later this week, since wallet didn't earn me interest. So I had almost 2.5 million yen in there. Could his quirk somehow sense that too? Take out your wallet, brat. I relaxed slightly as Brickhouse pointed the pistol at my chest. And I did as he demanded. Toss it to my partner, he continued, and I complied. Iori-san looked inside. He's only got 2,700 in here. But I'm still seeing him as worth a lot more. You holding out on us, punk? He asked, shoving the barrel closer. Almost close enough. Then he seemed to think of something and pulled back. Maybe he's worth that as a ransom, Brickhouse prompted his accomplice. Never seen that before, but maybe. He kept rooting around in my wallet, and then his eyes widened nervously, and he said, He's a UA student. What? Tatsumi-san looked surprised and angry, and his finger tightened on the trigger slightly. Step 1A. Grab his right wrist with my right hand and force the weapon up. Especially important in the case of a gun, so if he does get a shot off, it won't hit anyone. Step 1B. Use left fingers to hit the pressure points on the back of his hand and wrist, loosening his grip. Steps 1 successful. He dropped the gun. Step 2A. As he watches his weapon, release his wrist and palm strike to the throat. Step 2B. Kick the weapon away. In this case, under the counter towards Iam. Steps 2 successful. Gun is out of play and target is partially incapacitated, HP reduced by 42%. Step 3. Observe secondary opponent. Second opponent is frozen in fear and surprise. Step 4. Double punch to primary opponent's stomach. Step 4 successful. Target is unconscious and bumped into second opponent as he fell. The hard, mechanical feeling faded with Brickhouse, and more importantly his gun, out of play. I looked at Iori-san with caution. And part of me wondered if there was a way to keep Gamer's mind from affecting me that much. Please, just drop the axe and sit down next to him until the police arrive? I asked him. He looked at me. Then at his partner. Then at me again. Finally, he tossed the hatchet to the floor, just outside his reach. And he curled up on the floor. Wow, Iam commented. Did you even use your quirk? No, I told her. Just martial arts. I don't have my license, so using my power would be illegal. Iori-san whimpered. After giving a statement to the police and getting my wallet back, I headed home. Between Ichiraku's cameras, and Iori-san admitting to everything, there wasn't much they needed from me. They asked if I used my quirk, and I honestly told them no, and then showed them both my tactile TK power and my martial arts skills to prove it. Iam also replaced our food, and as soon as I was safely alone, I popped the new bags of ramen noodles, broth, and toppings into my inventory. That way it would be hot and fresh. Despite my having kept them informed as the incident played out, I was nonetheless swarmed when I entered the apartment. Tsu and Ami were first, and my other classmates were close behind. Mom stayed back, wearing that expression. The one that said she was going to be strong and supportive, even though she was secretly worried. I also noticed that they had all changed back to their uniforms, and Mom into casual clothes. "No bullet holes," Tsuyu reported after giving me an embarrassingly thorough pat-down. "His HP is full," Ami added, checking the party tab. "I'm fine," I reassured them. "They weren't a danger to me. I was just worried I might accidentally get shot." "Shot? Bullet holes?" Mikoto's eyes narrowed. "You didn't say anything about a gun." "Yes, I did," I frowned. "We might not have mentioned that," Ochako realized. "I have TK armor and physical resistance," I told the electrokinetic. "And it was a small caliber revolver. Even if he hit me all 6 times, I don't think it would have put me too far below half HP, considering the blasts I took from Bakugo's doppelganger." That seemed to calm her, and the others too. "Still, that was dangerous," Momo said. "Why did you stop them in the end?" "One of them had quirk that seemed to sense about how much money I had," I explained. "It could even see what is in inventory, in my wallet. Since they couldn't see that, they decided to try to ransom me. And they saw my student ID. Between those two things were about to escalate. And since the one with the gun moved closer and pointed the gun at me, I knew I could grab it. I didn't use my powers. I would have if I had to, but it wasn't necessary." I looked at them all. It was my fault they were in there. The one sensed my wallet from outside. So I couldn't let them do anything to Ichiraku. They didn't look convinced. "Skills," I ordered, and the screen appeared. I held down the button next to physical resistance, putting my unassigned points into it. Then the rate they were added accelerated, and instead of bumping it up to 50, it was at 63 when I jerked my finger off. Then, partly to have a round number, and partly to save face, I bumped it up to 70. "There," I tried to comfort them more. "Now I'll be even safer." Ami and Ochako looked pleased. But Tsu and Mikoto both looked exasperated. "That's not what we wanted," Tsu said. "We want you to stay out of trouble." I did it again. My weakness to upset women. +1 intuition. Still, I put on a strong expression and looked at my best friend firmly. "We're trying to be heroes," I said. "Staying out of trouble is not par for the course." "That is true," Mom agreed with me sternly. Then she smiled to lighten the mood and continued. "And it all worked out fine in the end. Now let's eat." "Where is the food?" Kyoka realized. I took the bags out of inventory and maneuvered over to the table. "That reminds me," our newest member recalled. "You promised to tell us just what all you have in there." "Dinner first," Mom instructed. "Okay, well," I was kind of embarrassed, so I stalled a bit. They were all staring at me expectantly, even Tsu and Mom, who should have known all of this, and Cass, who knew most of it. "So, in the first column, I have a 25-gallon water barrel. It takes up 2 spaces. I used to have gallon jugs, but I could only stack up to 3 of them in a square, so this works out better. It's mostly for paper or fire enemies, but we can also drink it." "Paper enemies?" Ochako asked. "He mentioned them from the Kung Fu skill book," Momo reminded her. "Oh, the origami ones," she said. "I didn't know you were being literal." I nodded. "Under that, in the last row for column 1, I have 2 steel folding chairs. To sit on if needed, to put the barrel on, or as backup weapons. The second column is supplies. A 24-pack of sports drinks in assorted flavors, though there's only 15 left right now. Then 3 boxes of fruit and grain breakfast bars, and lastly 2 boxes of almond and dark chocolate granola bars. We should reimburse you for the bars and Gatorade you have given us," Ami suggested tentatively. "You don't need to worry about that," Mom told them. "We generally give Izuku all of the spare change, since it is his dungeon. So it all works out." Right. I agreed with her. So, the third column is survival gear. My first aid kit, a survival knife that dropped in one of the dungeons. This wasn't the one from the first dungeon. It was a slightly larger one with storage in the handle for fishing line, a compass, and a couple of metal spikes. And a tent set that we mainly have for the tarp and the ropes. Fourth column is my stuff, my workout outfit, a spare set of casual clothing, and a stack of notebooks. The first one is my latest hero note, but I also have 7 blanks, in case I need paper for anything. Fifth column, I have a pencil box with assorted writing utensils, and a 20 centimeters ruler. I also keep one of Mom's workout outfits, and one of Tsu's there, though they aren't there now after our run earlier. And the last column is usually empty, for whatever items I need to carry temporarily. I gestured at the remains of our meal as I said that. So are you going to start carrying outfits for all of us? Ami asked, blushing slightly. There isn't exactly room, Mikoto pointed out before I could. Given the fact that some items stack, Momo mused, and some containers can hold multiple items, there may be a more efficient way to do this. Like if we can fit the food bars, notebooks, pencil case, and survival knife in a backpack, even if the pack ends up taking 2 squares, it would save 3 spaces. Except that if we need any of that stuff quickly, Tsu countered, Izuku would have to take it out of inventory, then out of the backpack. They spent the next hour discussing how to use my internal storage. Some people might think I should be annoyed that they were telling me how to use my power and to carry stuff for them. But I was just happy to be helping my friends, and a little embarrassed by the amount of women's clothing and underwear I was probably going to end up carrying on me. Earphone, what do you think about all that stuff Mamadoriya said? Spoiler, what do you mean? Uraraka, oh, about having crushes on him? Earphone, partly. I mean, if this is really mostly about being friends, why are we all girls? Kriati, we did set up the study group with mostly girls. He has been the only one of our male classmates to regularly attend. Earphone, that is true. But still. Froppy, it's because Izuku doesn't like boys. Earphone, roll eyes, that's obvious. Froppy, sad face. That's not how I meant it. Railgun, I think I get what you mean, Tsu. Kriati, what did you mean, #Froppy? Mercury, no real names in chat, please, #Railgun. Railgun, sorry, I kinda forgot because of Yura-o. Sir0G, sorry, is this better? Earphone, much cooler. Earphone, and I'd also like to know what you meant, #Froppy. Froppy, it's not really my story to tell, and it is third hand. But #Mercury can back me up, and Railgun saw some of it, too. Froppy, remember, Izuku only got the gamer last year. When Inko Bachan said Izuku didn't have friends and wasn't treated fairly, that's an understatement. His father basically moved away because Izuku is quirkless. And he was bullied quite a bit. Mercury, mostly by the boys. They treated him very badly. A few of the girls were nice to him, but most just avoided him. The teachers were the same. The male teachers mostly supported and encouraged the bullying, while the female teachers stopped it when they could, and comforted him when they couldn't. Railgun, those jerks at the arcade. Mercury, who? Froppy, Izuku called him Longfingers. Mercury, Bakubakuin's lieutenant. He took over after Bakubakuin died, but he was even worse. Railgun eyed K. I thought Izuku did a pretty good job of putting him in his place. Froppy, but that was after the UA exam. And he mostly did it for me. Kriati, so much for Japan's supposed anti-bullying campaign. Sir0G, quirks are still fair game. Railgun, sad face. Earphone, so no positive male role models or even friends? I can see why prefers to be around girls. I almost regret making that harem crack. Kriati, what? Railgun, really? Sir0G, really? Railgun, jinx. Earphone, yeah, I accused him of trying to put together a harem, and told him I wouldn't join. Maybe I should apologize. Spoiler, and to Froppy too. Froppy, why? Zero G, aren't you and Izuku together? Froppy, no. We are friends, and we both like each other. But Izuku hasn't had a good model for romance either, so he's not sure what he's feeling is love, and not just friendship and a helping of attraction. And I can't say I'm much better. Plus, we want to focus on classes, since getting into UA was hard, but actually attending UA is even harder. So no, Izuku and I aren't dating. Maybe we will. Or maybe we will decide we are just best friends. And if any of you really are interested in him, don't hold back on my account. Froppy, besides, I wouldn't mind if Izuku had a harem, as long as I was in it. Railgun, really? Earphone, seriously? Mercury, you would be okay with that? Froppy, maybe harem isn't the right word. I don't mean like a real harem, where a king or someone forces a bunch of girls to serve him. Or like an anime harem either. But a relationship where more than two people are together, and they all are either in love, or are good friends who support each other. I think that sounds pretty good. None of her friends responded. Froppy, I mean, think about it. Let's say, just for example, #Mercury and I were both in love with Izuku. Spoiler, Railgun, Creati and Earphone all mentally parroted for example with varying degrees of sarcasm. But none of them acknowledged it. Froppy, she is my friend too. I care about her. I wouldn't want her to be hurt by having to see us together, by me forcing them apart. I think I would almost rather step aside, so they could be happy. But I wouldn't really want to do that either. I'd rather both of us date him, trying to help each other get time. And when Izuku isn't around, the two of us could still hang out, be friends, and commiserate about our boyfriend challenging a gunman without his powers because it might get him a slap on the wrist. Maybe it's because I'm part frog, and they aren't exactly known for monogamy. Maybe it's because my parents are happy, but they aren't around very much, either me or each other. But I think it could work. Especially with a good guy like Izuku. Spoiler, that actually doesn't sound too bad. Creati, the extra support system would be good. Especially for working heroes. Railgun, or raising children. Earphone, I'd be more willing to buy it if there were any examples of it working. Earphone, in the real world I mean. Mercury, Uther. Creati, oh. Zero G, who? Creati, Uther Pendragon. Founder and president of Roundtable Industries. He's a British industrialist. Famous for being a major factor in the UK's resurgence and expansion. And also for having 2 wives. Mercury, sort of wives. The UK still does not allow polygamy. So the 3 of them have a ceremony once a year. First Uther marries Igraine. Then they immediately divorce. Then he marries Vivian. Then they immediately divorce. The 3 of them all live together, and despite the best reporters' efforts to prove otherwise, are in love and happy together. Zero G, wow. Earphone, I can't tell if that is incredibly romantic, or just totally messed up. Creati, I found an interview with Vivian. Igraine and I were best friends, but we both like Uther. So we all discussed it, and agreed to casually date, to determine if one of us liked him more, or he liked one of us more. But after a couple of years, we didn't seem to be going anywhere. I sat down and thought about it. I realized I didn't want to be hurt, but I also didn't want to hurt my best friend. I went to Igraine and talked to her about it. She had been thinking something similar. And also, she pointed out that Uther worked late a lot and traveled frequently, so if it was the 3 of us, we wouldn't be lonely when he was away. As we talked, we realized things could be pretty rough for Uther. This was the early days, when his company was still expanding and had a lot more pressure from established competitors. And we weren't sure if either of us could support him alone. So we went to him. And we talked. It took a while. And it can be a lot of work at times. But I'm genuinely happy, and can't imagine a better life. 0G, wow. Again. Froppy, there you go. The conversation ended there. But all of the young ladies kept thinking about it. Alright, Aizawa-sensei told us in his normal, tired tone. First thing, you all have to go home after classes again. Are the teachers still attempting to determine what happened with the press yesterday? Ida-kun said quickly. The principal and Snipe are still looking into it, but that's not the reason, Aizawa-sensei answered. No, 1A has a special training lesson tomorrow. It's going to put you through your paces, so the others want to make sure you are well rested. Personally, I don't care. What kind of special training? Emo-chan asked. It's a surprise. Has Aizawa told you about tomorrow yet? All Might asked a few minutes later in guild chat. Just that it is some sort of grueling, surprise training, Jiraiya answered first. Good, we could hear All Might's grin. I wanted to request that you don't do any dungeon runs either. You will definitely want to relax and get a good night's sleep. We glanced at each other, wondering just what we would be facing. I was the first one of our group through the lunch line and seated. Ami joined me shortly thereafter, with a slightly nervous look. And since no one had told me otherwise after whatever Mom had wanted with them yesterday, I was going to keep calling my friends by name, until they asked me not to. The Bluette took the seat next to me, which was unusual, since they had normally seated that spot to Tsu. Izuku-kun? She prompted nervously. I was wondering, since we are supposed to rest today, and I think this would count. There is this bookstore I like to go to. Not the normal chain store. This one has a lot of second-hand books, and even old and antique volumes. I thought there might even be some of them that might be special skill books, like the Kung Fu one. So I was wondering if you would like to go there after class? With me? It had been fun when we had gone to the regular bookstore last week with Ochako. And I would love to find a place that had whatever those garbled data skill books were. Sure, I nodded broadly. Sounds great. She smiled back and began to eat. Tsu arrived next. She looked at Ami and raised an eyebrow, but didn't seem angry. Instead, she took the spot across from me. Hey, Izuku? Tsu asked. Satsuki and Samidare have been asking when they would see you again. Samidare has? I blinked in surprise. More Satsuki, she admitted. But he did ask, since either of us can keep up with him in games like you can. So I was thinking maybe you could come over after school and help us with a puzzle we've been working on. I frowned sadly and glanced over at Ami. She looked down defeatedly. What is it? Tsu asked. I already asked Izuku to go out with me after school, Ami admitted, to a bookstore. Then she looked directly at Tsu and insisted. But that can wait. The books won't be going anywhere. Family is more important. But we aren't technically his family, Tsu argued. And you asked first? Maybe you could come with us? Ami suggested. We could spend an hour or two at the bookstore, and then you can go see Tsu's siblings? Do you have to pick them up early? I asked Tsu. Or do they have the late pickup today? Their school had been inconsistent lately, due to one of the teachers going out on maternity leave. Actually, my mom is in town, and she is picking them up today, she answered. So we can do what Ami suggested. Then Tsu looked at Ami and added, and you could come over too, if you want. Is that okay? Ami looked surprised. Of course, Tsu said happily. You are my friend too. And it will be great to have a genius help with the puzzle, especially when my brother drags Izuku away. Thank you. Ami smiled, tearing up. I would like that very much. I would never have found the store on my own. It was on the second floor above a women's clothing store. It had no outside label. It was hard to even tell that there was an outside way to get up to the store. I had probably walked by it dozens of times. It looked like it would be a small store, but small stores sometimes had the best finds. I wouldn't have thought this was here. Tsu unknowingly echoed my thoughts. My mother showed me this place, Ami said. She knows the owner. We walked in and looked over aisles of shelves. At the front there was a desk, and behind it a woman in a silk kimono. She looked like she was probably in her early 30s, had a long time cut on her jet black hair, and had a dynamite figure. She regarded us deep, knowing amber eyes, though they narrowed slightly and focused intently on me for a moment. I shuddered, almost wondering if I was being analyzed. "Good afternoon, Mizuno," she addressed Ami in a husky, sensual voice. "Are these your friends?" "Yes, sensei." She nodded. "This is Midoriya Izuka, and this is Azuri Tsuyu." "Welcome to my store, Midoriya Azuri." She inclined her head to us. "Please feel free to have a look around." We began to wander around, but I couldn't resist looking back and whispering, "Analyze." "Legal name? Race? Age? Level? Health, /, 1xx%. Stamina, / 1xx%. Ki, / 1xx%. Psions, / 1xx%. Mana, / 1xx%. Quirk? A woman of power and mystery. Or maybe just a really good obfuscation quirk. I frowned, but decided to focus on the store. After wandering up and down, we met at the front again. "This place is amazing," I said. "And huge. It feels like it is bigger on the inside." Tsu noted. Ami smiled happily. "Are you a Time Lord?" I asked the owner. "Doctor Who novels and guidebooks," she said with a slight grin. "Row 2, shelf 3 and half of shelf 4. "More than one shelf?" Ami looked at her in surprise. "That show has been on the air for 2 centuries, on and off." The owner sounded amused. "It has accumulated quite the collection of related books." "That's cool," I said, glancing where she had indicated. "Actually, sensei," Ami suddenly sounded nervous, "I want to show them the restricted section." She regarded Ami again. Then Tsu. Then she stared at me, longer than she looked at my friends. More piercingly. "All right," she finally said. She reached under the desk and hit a button. A door in the back popped open. Then she handed each of us a pair of white, cotton gloves. "Touch nothing with your bare hands," she warned us. "I will be watching." Ami and I both nodded, and we all put on the gloves. "Forbidden section?" Tsu's generally impassive voice sounded cautious. "It is mainly a Harry Potter joke," Ami assured us. "But it is also where she keeps the oldest, rarest, and most expensive books. That's why she doesn't let just anyone in there." It was impressive. There were a lot of antique, heavy, and leather-bound books, like the Tao of Kung Fu. But there were also more ordinary books. Well, maybe ordinary would be more correct. A signed first printing of Goblet of Fire was not a skilled book, and Goblet of Fire was not a rare book in general. But that copy. "Oh, what's this?" Tsu took down a small leather book. It looked more like an antique notebook, like the Da Vinci notebooks on display at various museums. She opened in and flipped a few pages in. "The Diary of Arsène Lupin III," she read. "The manga character?" I asked. "According to this," Tsu continued, "the real Lupin commissioned Monkey Punch to write those stories. That way he could be more famous, but have deniability." "Is it real?" Ami frowned. Tsu handed it to me. "This book contains the skills pickpockets, pick locks, detect traps, combat driving, parkour, and disguise. Learning the skills will consume the book. Proceed with learning these skills? Accept decline?" I hit decline, since it wasn't mine. But both girls looked at me in surprise. "It still might not be real," I whispered, looking down. "Just that it meets whatever prerequisites the gamer is looking for in a skill book." "Let's ask," Tsu suggested. We carried it gingerly up to the front. The owner was smiling broadly. She took the book from us, and opened it to the blank first page. She took out a lighter and held it behind the page. After a moment, the heat caused letters to appear. A publishing company, publish date, and ISBN. This was web novel, created after the original author's death, she explained, and a limited number of real copies were produced. Though there are those who claim the web novel was written by a real Lupin. I am not sure I believe it, but that was so long ago, it is hard to be sure. Suddenly, I wish I had analyzed it first. Because if I did it now, I was sure I would get the maybe real, maybe not explanation. Still, I would like to buy it, I told her, cringing slightly at the price sticker. May we leave it here while we keep looking? She nodded. We moved back to the restricted section, and after a few minutes looking, I found another amazing tome. Elemental Magic Primer. I blinked at the title and took it out. This book contains the skill Elementalism and the spells Flame Arrow, Wind Arrow, Water Bullet, and Stone Bullet. You do not qualify to use this skill book. I dismissed the window and opened the book. It was in a language I didn't recognize, and had illustrations of magic circles, presumably genuine. What is it, Izuku? Tsu came over to me, not that this part of the store was that large. A spell book, I said. A real one? Ami prompted. I looked down at the book. I think so, I said softly. It has a skill and 4 spells, but says I can't use it. Are you going to buy it? Tsu asked. I looked at the price tag and flinched again, though I was glad I had all that money in my wallet that had caused trouble at Ichiraki yesterday. Yes. I might be able to use it later, and I really want to see what the dungeon is like. I ended up buying some more mundane books from outside the special section, plus those 2 skill books. Ami and Tsu also purchased a few titles. Then we went to Tsu's place. Her mom and siblings were already there. Wani-chan. Satsuki raised over to the door as soon as we opened it. And Izuku Oni-chan. She trailed off when she saw Ami, and backed away. I touched Ami's arm in support. Satsuki had been shy when she first met me, too. Hi Satsuki, Sammy there, Mom. Tsu greeted her family. This is our friend, Mizuno Ami. Tsu knelt down to her sister's level, something she had taught me about dealing with kids. It made them feel more at ease when you didn't tower over them. Ami is really nice, and really smart. I asked her if she would help us with the puzzle. Is that okay? Hello, Buru-san, I said to Tsu's mom. Like her daughter, she had insisted I call her by name. Good to see you again, Izuku-kun. Okay, Satsuki agreed softly. Then she waved Ami over. Ami smiled gently and bent over to the girl. You're really pretty, Satsuki whispered. Thank you, Ami said happily, and blushed slightly. Will you two be staying for dinner? Buru-san asked us. Sure, Tsu answered for us. There is something I wanted to talk to you 3 about. Ajui Buru addressed her 3 children after we finished eating. Should we leave? I asked. Ami's expression mirrored my statement. No, it is nothing like that. She shook her head. I just wanted to tell them that I am taking a position in the home office, so I won't be traveling anymore. Mom? Tsu looked at her. We paid off the mortgage, she told them. And you have been providing money from your job helping Midoriya-san. I blinked, unaware that was how Tsu was explaining her dungeon loot. But it made sense, and I guess it was technically true. So even if I am making a little less, we will be more than fine, she continued. But you are in high school now, and you ain't no less. So you need more time for yourself, Tsu. And I would like to spend more time with my children. Then she trailed off and looked them cautiously. That's not a problem, is it? She asked. Of course not, Tsu said. And Satsuki hugged her mom. Sammy Dare tried to look indifferent, but I could tell he was excited, too. We had barely checked in the next morning, when Aizawa-sensei ushered us outside. All right, line up, Ida-san barked at us as we moved towards the bus. Dude, you are the only one out of line, Kirishima told him, chuckling. Ida-san looked around, then pursed his lips. You don't need to try so hard, Ochako told him. We filed onto the bus. On the way, we talked about what we thought the special training might be. After all the rounds of lions and gazelles, and the heroes and villains last week, we didn't think it would be combat-related. The general consensus was that it might be rescue training, but Ishido-san and Toru-san made a good case for dealing with the press after what happened Monday. After about 30 minutes, we pulled up to a giant dome and a familiar figure outside. It's 13, the space hero, I exclaimed brightly. The rescued hero who has saved hundreds if not thousands of people from disasters. And nice to meet all of you, 13 said. It is nice to be recognized. As you might have guessed, you are here today to begin training on how to deal with disasters. Heroes don't just fight villains. They have to deal with fires, earthquakes, and any number of other catastrophes. So using my experience, I have constructed this specialized training facility. Welcome to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. And there you have it, power players. Part 5 was a wild journey, right? If your mind is still processing the awesomeness, drop a comment below with your gamer tag and your take on Deku's newfound powers. I'm dying to hear it. If you're not part of the Power Squad yet, hit that subscribe button, join the ranks, and let's keep this adventure going. Massive love for your continuous support. You guys are the real MVPs. Get ready for more gaming and heroics. Part 6 is just around the corner. Stay legendary, power players, and until next time, this is your pal Chronos signing off. Catch you in the next level.